So what do the unredacted Mueller report and the Breonna Taylor case have in common? A dangerous lack of transparency. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So at first blush, the Mueller investigation and the Breonna Taylor case might not seem to have much in common. But there are some recent developments in both of those matters that highlight the same important point, and that is that secrecy in government is corrosive and it breeds distrust. Transparency in government breeds confidence in outcomes. Let's talk first about the Mueller report. So there is a new court opinion that was issued by Judge Reggie Walton in the FOIA litigation that has been underway for months now. What is FOIA litigation? Freedom of Information Act litigation. Some news organizations sued the Department of Justice trying to get a copy of the unredacted Mueller report so we can see everything that was done as part of the Trump-Russia investigation. Bill Barr made a whole bunch of redactions, blacked out huge swaths of the Mueller report. And he told Judge Reggie Walton, just trust me, those were all necessary and appropriate redactions. And Judge Walton said, yeah, I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to take your word. Give me a copy of the unredacted Mueller report. I will decide for myself whether all those redactions were necessary and appropriate. Now remember, this is the same Attorney General Bill Barr and the same Judge Reggie Walton who tangled previously, and Reggie Walton issued written findings that Bill Barr spun the Mueller report, that's a quote, mischaracterized the Mueller report, that's a quote. Bill Barr's statements about the Mueller report were contradicted by the contents of the Mueller report, that's a quote, and he concluded Bill Barr lacks candor. So Judge Walton said, excuse me, Attorney General, if I don't take your word for it, give me the unredacted Mueller report. Well, we just got another order from Judge Reggie Walton, and surprise, here is page 31 of a 40-page opinion. Now, in fairness, Judge Walton said that some of the redactions were appropriate. However, quote, the Department of Justice represents that it has withheld information that's protected by the deliberative process privilege because the information pertains to deliberations about charging decisions not to prosecute, which would reveal criminal charges considered but not pursued against certain named individuals. Based on the court's review of the unredacted version of the Mueller report, the court concludes that the Department of Justice has failed to satisfy its burden to demonstrate that the withheld material is protected by the deliberative process privilege. So Bill Barr, give it over. I added that last part. Is it any surprise that a federal court has again ordered Bill Barr to disclose what he was trying to hide from the American people? Now, let's turn to an interesting parallel between that, government secrecy not being properly used and breeding distrust, to the Breonna Taylor case. Now, as I'm sure you all know, Breonna Taylor was killed in her own home by police officers when they were executing a search warrant in her home. And the Attorney General for the state of Kentucky, a guy named Daniel Cameron, presented the evidence to the grand jury in Kentucky. And after he was done, he walked out, faced the cameras, and said, the grand jury has decided not to indict the police officers for the killing of Breonna Taylor. Well, almost immediately, a grand juror, this is unusual, folks, applied to the judge and said, I am demanding that you, judge, order the release, the public disclosure of what went on in those secret grand jury proceedings. Because the grand juror suggested that, I don't agree with the representations being made by the Kentucky Attorney General who presented the case to us. Now, this goes back to the fact that secrecy breeds distrust, transparency breeds confidence. Grand jury proceedings are secret by law, and that is as it should be for the most part. Stay with me for a minute. I want to read a short passage from, of all things, Judge Reggie Walton's opinion in the Mueller case, because he took up the question of whether grand jury secrecy is important. And here's what he said before ruling, as I just read, that Bill Barr wrongfully redacted some portions of the Mueller report. Here's what he said about the importance of grand jury secrecy. He quoted a Supreme Court case that said the proper functioning of our grand jury system depends upon the secrecy of grand jury proceedings. Why? Well, first, if the grand jury proceedings were made public, many witnesses would hesitate to come forward voluntarily, knowing that those against whom they would testify would be aware of that testimony. Moreover, witnesses who appear before the grand jury would be less likely to testify fully and frankly, as they would be open to retribution as well as inducements. In other words, people could retaliate against them for testifying truthfully about crime in the grand jury, or provide them with inducements not to testify before the grand jury if all of these matters were public. There would also be the risk that those about to be indicted would flee. That's another reason these proceedings are secret. Or those about to be indicted would try to influence individual grand juries to vote against indicting them. And finally, by preserving the secrecy of the grand jury proceedings, we assure that persons who are accused but exonerated by the grand jury, found to have done nothing wrong, will not be held up to public ridicule. So, folks, please don't misunderstand me. Grand jury secrecy is extremely important for all of those reasons articulated by the Supreme Court and related in Judge Walton's opinion. However, there are times when grand jury secrecy is less important than the need for transparency and public confidence. That's why many jurisdictions allow a prosecutor to apply to a judge to disclose the evidence that was presented to a grand jury so the public can have confidence that everybody was given a fair shake in the grand jury, all of the evidence was presented, all of the appropriate arguments were made, so the public can have confidence in the result of the grand jury's investigation, whether to indict or decline to indict. So here is the good news. The good news is that in the Breonna Taylor case, the judge has ordered the release of the grand jury information. Here is the CNN headline. Kentucky Attorney General given until Friday, tomorrow, to release grand jury recordings in Breonna Taylor case. Now, what about all those concerns that I just read that suggest grand jury proceedings really do need to be secret? And they do, generally. But in a police excessive force case resulting in death, after all of the evidence has been presented to the grand jury, after all of the arguments have been made by the prosecutor in secret, behind closed doors, about whether the grand jury should indict or not, at that point when the grand jury's work is done, the court should order the release of all of that evidence, information, and material so the public can have confidence in the outcome. I suggest, folks, gone are the days when government officials can walk into secret proceedings, whether it's Bill Barr or the Attorney General for the state of Kentucky investigating the Breonna Taylor killing. Gone are the days that we can have complete blind confidence that what happens in secret, what happens behind closed doors, will be completely on the up and up. So when the government official walks out of that secret proceeding, whether it's Bill Barr hiding portions of the Mueller report from us, or the Kentucky Attorney General in the Breonna Taylor case, when they walk out and they say, trust us, these are the decisions that were reached, and they're all on the up and up, well, gone are the days that we're going to take their word for it. We need to see for ourselves, because transparency breeds confidence in the outcome. Stay tuned, folks, because by tomorrow we should be learning more about what went on in the Breonna Taylor grand jury, and then we'll get to judge for ourselves. As always, folks, please stay safe, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.